All right, thank you all for being on the line, and welcome to July's HMIS webinar. My name is Gloria Vercruzen.
I'm Thaddeus Gassy.
I'm Stephanie.
And on today's agenda, really quickly, we want to notify you of the upcoming 2020 HUD specifications. We have an update regarding the two documents that we've been asking you about per agency. And we need to clarify the workflow notes regarding housing move-in dates. So we're going to provide you with some additional guidance around housing move-in dates for housing providers. And then in today's deep dive training, we're going to go over exit destinations, and this does affect every agency. We're running a poll during today's training to quiz you on your understanding of exit destinations, and we'll see how accurate the group is at the end of today's webinar.
And our webinar reminders, remember to share what you've learned with the rest of your agency. During this webinar, to ask questions, use the Q&A function. Common questions are answered live. The Q&A will be aggregated and shared at a later date, and longer questions can be emailed to the help desk. Keep in mind your agency's attendance is required, but we always make a recording available later. We will email the video links by the following Monday. For today's webinar, this means Monday, August 5th. Any users not in attendance have until Friday, August 9th to complete it.
For our news item, the 2020 HUD specifications. For everyone, this is for everyone in Balance of State and Maricopa. There will be HMIS changes coming, and these are due approximately October 1st because of the updated 2020 HUD specifications. These are the set of instructions that HUD gives to every software vendor and continuum of care, telling them how to set up their HMIS software and which questions should be asked. The things that we change include updates to assessments, reporting, and data definitions. These are very important, and we will cover these changes in the annual refresher training, so keep an eye out for that. That's in late September or early October, depending on how quickly WellSky, which is our software vendor, is able to update our software service point.
And on that note, we're going to move on to our next topic.
So the next topic is for both Balance of State and Maricopa. This is the two documents that are still needed by some agencies. This is the last reminder that we require the return of your two documents. They were the primary point of contact expectations and the agency self-certification form. We are waiting on 17 agencies in Maricopa and 12 in Balance of State. They're listed on the screen here. All should be filled out and returned to the help desk absolutely as soon as possible.
I'll give it just a little bit to see if there's any questions on that one.
All right, those two documents are really important, so getting those back to us as soon as possible helps on our side to know who we should be in contact with, as well as know if you guys are acting according to that self-certification. So our next training is for both Balance of State and Maricopa regarding housing programs. It is about recording the housing move-in date in the correct place in service point. This item is for the housing projects, in particular for permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing as well, and other permanent housing. The reminder is to please record the housing move-in date on the day that it occurs. If a client moves in to their unit or has the ability to move into their unit the same day as their project entry, the HMIS, the housing move-in date should be recorded there in service point. This is the red circle and arrow below. Within a lot of housing programs, it's most likely the case that a client is moving into a unit or has the ability to move into a unit after their project entry, and this shows within the workflow that they have a period of time that they are searching for housing. If they do move in after the project entry date, you should create an interim update, and the HMIS or the housing move-in date should be entered at the interim update. As a reminder, creating and editing interim updates happen in the green circle and arrow below. In our example, let's say that Tess Testerson enrolls at the Permanent Supportive Housing Program on July 1st. We can create the project entry, but we'll leave the housing move-in date empty. On July 10th, the client is able to move in. So we've created an interim update to record this information. We create the update rather than going back to the data recorded at entry. This workflow isn't just going forward from now. We ask that you see past errors like this in the system and please correct them. Also, if it is something that you need assistance with, you can always reach out to us at the help desk by submitting a ticket or calling our help desk phone number.
Let's have a look at these questions for just a moment. All right, question, does this also apply to TLP programs? This person asking it is about RI projects. This is a transitional housing type at RI projects.
So transitional housing type of programs are not considered permanent housing programs and do not record the housing move-in date. So for this TLP program as well, the housing move-in date is not required.
All right, we're not seeing any other questions. We're going to go ahead and move on to the final training topic. Exit destinations. So the reason we are reviewing this topic of exit destinations is because we're seeing low scores in exit destination data quality, and we want to review how to select the correct exit destination. During this topic, we're going to go over the significance of exit destination, give examples of what we're seeing, and share guidance that you can bring back to your team. This next slide shows the exit destination data quality for Maricopa. Don't worry, Balance of State, you're coming up next. The attention should be on the lowest row, destination error rate calculated. This is a percentage, and it's calculated as the destinations of don't know, refused, or missing divided by the number of leavers that year. So in other words, of all the leavers this fiscal year, this percentage of them had a destination error. So for both Balance of State and Maricopa's percentages, we're seeing this error rate increasing for all the project types except rapid rehousing. Of particular interest first in Maricopa, and then we'll go on to the Balance of State one. See the arrow under permanent supportive housing, which if my mouse will show on your screens is right here. You can see that this item went up from 8.4% to almost 18%. The rest of the red arrows show other very high error rates, 38% for emergency shelter and safe havens, 12% for all transitional housing, and street outreach is at 20%. Of interest in Balance of State, their transitional housing went from 3 to 7%, that's right here, and the emergency shelter and street outreach numbers are still very high, 37% for emergency shelter and 46%, almost half of the street outreach exits are counting as errors right now. So how much do we need to improve? The target percentages are supposed to be 5% or less. And at 10%, our continuums have to explain to HUD what's going on, as well as our plan to improve. And I mean, who really wants to have to keep explaining that to your funder? At some point, the data becomes unusable because we aren't being accurate about where our clients go after we serve them. But there are ways that we can turn this around. Let's start by reviewing HUD guidance on exit destinations by project types. So for emergency shelters and transitional housing and safe havens, and also project-based permanent supportive housing, HUD expects clients to be moving out and needs to know where they went. For homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, and supportive services only, there isn't the same expectations for clients to relocate. They may be in the same place they stayed before or during their entry to the project. That's normal. And then for the night-by-night emergency shelters, HUD assumes there will be high rates of missing destinations, so they don't count that against you. Moving on to this next slide, we get asked a lot about what counts as positive exit destinations in the first place. This is page 79 from the APR and CAPER specifications document that's available online. If you want to look at your agency's destinations, by the way, definitely use the APR or the CAPER because it will count positive and negative destinations for each of your clients. So here are some of the things to notice here. Green cells with a check mark are positive exits for that project type. Gray cells with an X are excluded from the positive negative count. They're considered like neutral, so deceased or going to the hospital or a long-term care facility. That's stuff you can't really help either way, so it's not counted against you, but it's also not positive. You can see that the street outreach gets lots of positive exits. That's because most destinations are better than staying on the street. You can also see a lot of destinations categorized as temporary institutional up here in this quadrant will be negative for every street project type, for every project type but street outreach. These are negative because they're not solutions. They are temporary situations or just straight bad situations. You can see that some destinations are always negative, including jail, place not meant for habitation, and significantly, this bottom list down here, that's the other category. Client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, no exit interview completed, or other. So regarding that last section of answers, this is the way you're going to tell them apart. Client doesn't know means you asked or you provided a form and they didn't know what their situation will be. Client refused means you asked or provided a form and they would not tell you. Data not collected means you had the opportunity, but you did not ask. You did not even have them fill out a form. No exit interview completed means you did not have the opportunity to ask or provide a form to fill out, so there was no exit interview. And then finally, other, this is the ultimate last resort. You only mark this if the destination truly cannot be even loosely described by the available options. So those are the main things we wanted to point out with exit destination. We're going to pause for a bit and see if there's any questions that we want to answer live at this time.
Okay, we do have one question. Someone is asking, is it possible to send out the quiz and answers so that we can review this with our staff?
Certainly.
Yeah.
It won't show up as a fancy poll though with questions and answers. You'd probably have to turn it into an Excel document or something like that. But you know, I can copy and paste the questions and answers and you guys can turn it into a paper quiz or whatever. Sounds like a good idea.
That is a good idea. Yeah.
All right, there was a comment where somebody said that the only time that we use other is when the person is deceased. But just so you know, there is a deceased option. So you're going to want to pick deceased for deceased.
Oh, we have a question. The question says, can confirmed word of mouth count as an exit destination? Like if another agency was to confirm their location. A good example of this might be a street outreach that has an open entry and they haven't seen the client, they don't know where the client is, and then they can see in HMIS that the client has an open entry into an emergency shelter. At that point, can you update the exit destination according to confirmed word of mouth?
Yes, yes you can. There was a comment about what if a resident had a heart attack and left our program to be admitted at, for example, a VA hospital. So this would be, you would select that one. Let me move back here, a couple slides here. This would be where you would select line 6 up here, hospital or other residential non-psychiatric medical facility. And to confirm what the person is asking, it is correct that this would not count against you. What happens with these gray items is they show up on the APR or CAPR in a separate line that says the number of clients who were excluded from the exit destination count. And the reason they were excluded was because they were one of these gray X's on this chart. And to clarify also, somebody else continued and said, if they had ended up in a psychiatric hospital, yes, that would be considered a negative destination for all but street outreach to end up in a psychiatric hospital. All right, so it's not looking like there's a whole lot of other questions coming our way, so we're going to go ahead and end this webinar pretty much early. So as always, I'm going to send you a follow-up email with a survey. Let us know all your thoughts and any additional questions. You can also take it to help desk for additional questions. We want to make sure that this exit destination stuff makes a lot of sense to you. As always, whenever the video recording comes out this next Monday at the very latest, you can always share that video with your other staff members too if you think it's important that they get the video version of us talking about exit destinations.